Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mama Genius Hub podcast. I am not the normal host. I'm not who you'd expect to hear, especially the voice, right? But also not who you'd expect to see. And I'm really excited today. We're actually going to dive into a really special episode with Michelle. I'm going to have her introduce herself when we get into the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Her name's Alex Sanfilippo, founder of Podmatch and friend of Michelle. Excited to be celebrating 100 episodes with her today.
Welcome to Mama Genius Hub podcast, where we support moms with big dreams, from entrepreneurship to personal aspirations. I'm your host, Michelle DeKeyser, and I'm here to help you unlock your potential in all areas of life. Join us as we explore strategies for thriving in motherhood while pursuing the dreams, the key to actually unlocking your genius. Subscribe now and embark on a journey to realize your fullest potential.
Michelle, welcome. How are you?
Wow, this is so weird to have you introduce and do all this stuff, but I'm so excited for this 100th episode. It's hard to believe. And I know you have the statistics with that. How many people make it to the 100th episode?
Yeah, 100 episodes. You have just over a 10% chance. It's like 11% chance of making it to 100 episodes if you start a podcast. Yeah, people don't know how much work it is, but congratulations, you made it. I mean, that's amazing. And by the way, your chances of making it further now in podcasting get a lot better if you can make it to 100 episodes. Really proud of you, Michelle, and thankful to be here. For anyone who's checking this out and you're already like, who is this guy on Mama Genius Hub podcast? I'm a friend of Michelle's. We've been able to collaborate, and she's been on my podcast. She was actually episode 300 of my show. And that wasn't me saying that's why I need to be episode 100. Michelle approached me, and I'm really honored and excited to be here. But Michelle, something that I want you to do to start us off with is something that you do for everyone else. I don't know if you've done this for yourself. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Because I think that many of us would love to hear a bit more about you as you've introduced 100 different guests over this time.
Well, actually, right before I do that, I was going to say the episode I did on Alex's about being a great guest on a podcast. We're going to air that right before this episode. I know this one's going live now, but when we air the episodes coming up, it's going to be episode 99 from Podcasting Made Simple. So just so you know, you can switch back if you're listening. It'll be released this Friday. Now, as for me, I'm the host of the Mama Genius Hub podcast, and I have created the Mama Genius Hub. But really, it comes down to that intro of who you are and what you do. My number one goal was to help moms figure out what's their purpose. Who are they? Because I was lost in my own purpose. This isn't the normal intro that I give. I want to speak from the heart on the intro this time. And I have 3 kids who've inspired me to do those things. And what I learned the most was being that role model for your kids. Because now I'm seeing my son wanting to speak on summits, doing his own thing, cooking, things like that. So for me, my intro right now is really just being who you are. And this is all about moms out there thinking that they have to give up their own dreams to fulfill their kids' dreams. But we have to stop that, because at some point it's about us being the role models that inspire our kids to follow their own dreams and see what those dreams are.
Michelle, it's so good. And I think the way you just ended that, like the purpose, we still have to have our own internally, and it does go beyond just our kids. Now that is a big part of it, right? Especially for mothers, that's huge. But you also still have to have something yourself, because it gives you the opportunity to model. Something I've heard you talk about is that you help support creative moms that want to still be creative. When I was thinking about this, Michelle, I was thinking what you're doing here is kind of like having another kid. Getting a podcast
Beyond another kid.
right? Like getting the podcast to 100 episodes, you have to nurture it. Different problems come up as you get further along, right? Like it's obviously not the same weight, but you are saying yes to something else. And the thing that I've seen so many, especially young mothers, fall into is just that I can only handle my kid or my kids right now. There's no more room for me. And you've really just shown that, hey, if you're creative and you're a mom, there is still room. Like your dream can go beyond just your kids. And as a matter of fact, I've watched you and your kids thrive more, as you just mentioned, because of what you've done. I would love for you to talk a bit more about like why the podcast, because that's kind of where it all started. And I know it turned into the hub and stuff like that, right? And that's just it growing and evolving. But why the podcast? What made you want to do that?
Well, I think it really comes down to listening to what's internal in you. I thought I wanted to be this writer, and I was like, oh, I want to write these books. I want to write this blog. And even my husband said, well, why are you not doing a blog? It's something you want to do. I had started a blog on Wix, wasn't getting much traction. I was like, all I need to do now is hire someone who shows me how to do SEO and log it all together and do the things, right? So I hire a coach for that. And that was back in January of 2023. Like I'm working with him, and he kept saying 50 blogs in 3 months in this format to link them all together and do all this, right? I'm like, in my mind, that sounds great. In reality, when it came to actually writing the blogs, what I ended up doing was interviewing people, trying to take those transcripts into ChatGPT and then merge it with his format and try to create these vlogs, and just felt like so much work and not natural and not like me. But I kept thinking, this is what I need to do to get all the traction. That's where I was being led. Actually, it was 2020, October 25th of 2023 was my birthday, or well, that date's my birthday. But I was like, I hadn't talked to him in a couple months. For me, all I need is a deadline. So I set up this deadline of November 12th. All of a sudden, I'm like, to do this blog launch. I'm like, I still don't have the blogs done. I just need to talk to him. I have a couple questions. He's in Australian time, and I get off the phone with him at 6 o'clock in the morning on my birthday, and I'm just in tears. As he's talking, just all these things, none of the questions I thought like that was going to give me the direction or the need to do that was being answered. And so I was just kind of sitting there just with the tears rolling down my face, wondering what's next? What am I supposed to do? And that's, I think, when we have those points, actually listening to what's inside of ourselves. And all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing? I have been interviewing people. Why am I afraid? Like, why am I not going to podcasting? Like all of a sudden that thought of podcasting came into my head on that day, like one of those pivotal moments. But October 25th and November 12th, that's 2.5 weeks to figure out how to make a podcast happen. But I did. I had already had 10 interviews done through Zoom and stuff. And so I took those interviews, figured out what an RSS feed was, figured out how to upload it, where to upload it, do all those things and all of that to create a launch party. I ended up releasing, I think, 10 podcasts throughout the week with the Women's Circle, things like that to maneuver it. What's funny though, Alex, is on March 14th, 4 months later, I didn't even realize it, hadn't even like planned it, not even thought about it. I had 50 episodes released. So 50 blogs turned into 50 episodes in 4 months. When you go into listening to yourself, get into your own genius, that's when things start happening. It's hard to weed out all that noise. And what I want to do is help each of us as moms to weed out the doubts, weed out the noise to what is your heart telling you to propel you forward. That's where this idea of the hub and everything came from, is how each mom needs something differently at different points in their lives. But if I can bring speakers and things that relate to moms in a timely manner of 15, using this idea of 15 minutes, everything done in 15 minutes, we can do it.
Michelle, that's so good. And we're going to go to a quick commercial, but when we come back, I really want to dive into getting to your own genius and getting rid of that noise. I think that's a really powerful topic for us to get into. We'll be right back to share that.
Attention mompreneurs. Do you feel like you're constantly juggling responsibilities without a moment to yourself? It's time to pause and reflect with our Mama Genius quiz. Tailored for busy mamas like you, this quiz will help you identify what's blocking your path and inspire you to harness your unique strengths. Transform how you manage life and business, find your rhythm, and ignite your joy. Visit mamageniushub.com today to discover your Mama Genius. Again, that's mamageniushub.com.
All right, Michelle, I love hearing that story. And I think there's so many points here I want to touch on, but I want to start off with the fact that I'm really proud of you for investing. Like, you found a coach, you went the direction you thought you needed to go, but then you did something that says more about your character. You realized it was wrong and you need to do something else. I want to go back to that moment that was very early on your birthday. I like to sleep in. Michelle, you like to wake up really early and get beat up by somebody on a phone call telling you're doing something wrong. But can you go back to that moment for me? When you were there, that was the moment you decided, but I'm going to do this. Is not the right direction. Can you share a little about what you're feeling? I think other moms would resonate with that if they've told this is what you need to do, but they have this feeling of something else. Can you share more about that so we can all learn to identify it a little bit better?
I think that was actually one of the toughest things for me as well, because honestly, I had actually a couple weeks back, or I don't even remember exactly when, I'd actually laid out a plan with my husband, like the blog, listed a couple different things. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to say I pivot yet again? As entrepreneurs or just in life, you're like, squirrel. And you're like, how do you know it's finding the right path, right? So like the fear just like overtook me. At the same time, I was like, well, let me see if the thought of like, well, let me see what if. And I think my husband at the time was in Mexico on a business trip, not on my birthday, but like the next week or something when I was getting things ready. For me at that moment, just listening to him talk, I don't even remember what he said. I just knew it wasn't right. It is scary though, because as you're going through that idea is like, did I fail? And that's the question that always comes in your head, is like, I'm still not where I want to be. And those thoughts keep coming through. But the thought was finally like, what have I been doing? When I look back at the things that I had been doing in the 2 years up to that point, I had been collecting, anytime I was in an entrepreneur group, I'm like, who speaks to moms? And then I was doing women's circles, and all of a sudden I was doing all these interviews and these Facebook Lives. I even did one with you where we did the 12 days of genuine connection. And I was doing all these things, and I was like, when I actually look at the things I was actually doing, that was not blogging. And so it was just in that moment, accepting the things that I was actually doing. But I think the fear of putting my voice behind it, I've always been afraid of speaking. And I can remember being in elementary school. I was in LA, and being white, I was a minority because I went to Catholic school, so it was very Hispanic. And so I was but I would turn red so quickly, which I'm not even turning red now, but I would turn red so quickly as soon as I give me a presentation, and the boys in the back of the room would make these cherry bomb noises. So I was always like, I don't speak. I can't speak. And I think that's kind of where the fear came from. But on that moment, I was just like, I have to step into my voice. I have to do something like this. It's propelling me forward. And as soon as I took that step, doors, not all the big doors I want yet have opened, but doors started opening so much faster than they did in the 9 months when I was trying to do a blog.
You said a lot of things that I think are really key, but the one I want to dive into is something you said earlier about listening to what's internal. What you did over this week or two process after this call that started your birthday off maybe on not on the right foot was you started looking internally instead. And I think so many of us are quick to get advice from somebody else, which isn't bad, but success leaves clues, including in our own life. There was a trail and a path behind you, Michelle, of what you had done that was meaningful in leading up to some sort of result that could turn into whatever you were supposed to do next. And the only way to really know that is to stop and reflect. What did that process look like for you? I know you were workshopping out with your husband, but what did it look like for you to say, this is what I'm going to do? How can someone say, I don't think this conventional wisdom is right for me? How do they start that reflecting process, and what did it look like for you?
You know, what's funny is I've never met, I want to put Sarah Blakely's name out there. I've never met her. I don't think I've actually purchased a couple things from Spanx, but one of the things I loved about her journey was that she talked about in the 80s being with a whole bunch of men entrepreneurs and being in a mastermind with them. And she was like, I'm going to talk to the universe. I'm going to do all these things. And they're looking at her like she's crazy. And they're like, where's your business plan? Where is this? And all those things that I feel sometimes we as women get in our way. And so I think that's why we do things a little bit differently. All of a sudden things start taking off for her in a different way than they did for them. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, what are you doing? And so for me at that moment, I kept relying on those stories of other women who have done things like that in a different way. And I know sometimes we feel like we have to do it a certain way, but when we start actually looking internally to the way we're supposed to do it, and yes, it's great to have all these business ideas and things from people, but then the question is, which idea is your best step forward? Which I think is where the meditation, the internalization, all of those things really come into play. You might have 4 different options, but like, is YouTube, blog, podcast, what's your next best step from all of those to propel you forward in your message? I feel like that's where the trickiness comes in. I like to call it the in-betweenpreneur, where we're in the weeds of everything. Most people, a lot of speakers I've worked with, been in all these coaching programs, all these things. Same here, been in all these coaching programs. But what is my next step? Knowledge is only potential till you take the implementation. So now we need the support to take that next step of implementation. That's why I love the process of the Women's Circle, because in that structure, you're speaking from the heart. That's what I was releasing all the blockage. And now I can see what my next step is based on the information that I have in front of me. You kind of have to weed the information to what's going to sit with you.
Yeah, I want to give this disclaimer for everybody. It doesn't have to be a podcast. Michelle's journey is not going to be your journey at all. If the idea of speaking on a stage freaks you out, but not necessarily like you should do it, but it freaks you out, you're just like, I know I would hate to do that in every way. Maybe that's not it, right? It's gonna be something different for each of us. But I love the fact that, Michelle, you're talking about, like, first and foremost, go internal. And then the next thing after that is to get in some form of a circle. And I always say that we grow in circles, not in rows. Some of you want to go to conferences, which are great, but you're going to go so much further when you're in a circle, because then you have the chance to say, you know what? Here's what I'm thinking. Does anyone have any thoughts? Versus stage is telling me do X, Y, and Z. I have to do X, Y, and Z. Can you talk more about the community aspect of furthering the idea and stepping into what it is that you feel like you're supposed to do, and the role that played for you?
It comes down to the masculine, feminine type of structure. Think of how we've grown up in a school. You have the teacher in front of the room. You're supposed to take notes, disseminate the information, and figure out how to use it. A lot of times it's just getting more knowledge, not necessarily doing anything with it. versus when you're in a circle, there's a facilitator who's leading the discussion or the theme or something, but everyone's getting a chance to process. And that is the key, is really that processing. And sometimes processing is silence and just sitting in the silence and figuring out what's coming to you. But that's the difference of when we start to do things in community and circle. And it's also finding the right community, because when you're starting something new, it wasn't safe, felt comfortable for me, but coming into these circles of other women who are doing exactly what I'm doing, who feel the same fears, who feel what you're going through, it helps to hear each other's thoughts and processes of how you're each processing it to push you forward. The listening skills that you get, you take those to your kids, and all of a sudden I'm able to sit with my kids and actually listen to what they're going through rather than me trying to give our 2 cents. Most time, no one needs our 2 cents. There's 5% where someone asks for it and someone needs your 2 cents, but that's 5% of the time. 95% of the time, they need your hand, they need your presence, and they just need your comfort. That is something that happens, especially when we're going into something new, and especially being with moms when we're stressed with all the other things.
Oh, looks like we just lost Michelle. Should be back in any second. So I'll share quickly. After 300 episodes of my podcast, the only thing that still scares me in podcasting, of course, there's like nerves and stuff like that when you interview somebody, but the only thing that freaks me out still is the tech side of things. You never know. You are at so many things disposal if it's going to happen or not. Let me see if I heard from her here. So just a little fun fact, if you're looking to ever do anything live like this is the stuff you have to learn to roll with right here. For me, it's fun. And I'll tell you what, I found that people have more grace for this type of thing than you'd think. You're back.
I put my hotspot on. I'm not at home, so I had no idea what the internet did. That's never happened before, so apologize.
Did you get your full thought out there? I want to make sure that you're able to get that.
Can you repeat? I got sidetracked trying to do all of this. Can you refresh my memory, please?
So what I was getting at is the role that community plays in helping you workshop and figure out the idea you want to roll with. As a mom, you understand there's a purpose here. You've done some self-reflecting. And what element does having people around you, a circle around you, really play?
Yeah, and the last thing that I want to emphasize, it really is finding that right community and to get out of the thought that we need to do things alone, because honestly, it's easier and funner when we do it together and you get out of your own head. We keep thinking, oh, well, I can do that. I know I can do that. But until your body actually, you physically start doing some of these things and do the reps, you have not done it. It's only potential. And to really do that with other people in hearing, because there's really only 2 ways to get thoughts out of your head. One is to write them down, and 2 is to say them aloud to someone else. This gives you that process of being able to do both and release those negative thoughts and start to turn your own story into you actually start doing those reps.
It's so good. I think back to a quote, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And getting these ideas out of your head and what that actually does for you and the freedom you can get from it. I want to talk about fear a little bit here in a minute, but real quick, we're going to turn to a quick commercial break. We'll come back for that.
Do you ever feel like your own dreams are fading as you keep everything together for your family, or been buried under laundry and school runs and endless to-do lists? They're so deep, you don't even know what they are anymore. The Mama Genius Hub is here to help you uncover that part of you again. Maybe you felt that pull to start a passion project, return to a hobby you once loved, or pursue a career that lights you up, but you're so caught in everyone else's needs that you keep slipping through the cracks. In just 15 minutes a day, our mini courses will help you reconnect with those dreams while finding a new rhythm in motherhood's beautiful, messy life. And best of all, you'll be doing it with a community of moms who truly understand the juggle and the joy. The Mama Genius Hub is a community who've been there and are here to support and inspire each other every step of the way. It's time to rediscover your spark, live in your genius, and inspire your kids by showing them how to follow their own passions. Join the Mama Genius Hub today and start creating space for you again without guilt and doing it solo.
Come to www.connectingmamas.com for more details.
All right,
And we're back.
Michelle, I want to go back to a question. You said that you were afraid of your voice. You talked about how in school, the boys in the back of the room would be making fun of you because you turned bright red, and that you had this defeating mindset, I can't speak. Fast forward years later, you started interviewing people when you were supposed to be blogging. The wisdom you got was to start blogging, but for some reason you went to speaking, sharing a microphone. Can you talk about overcoming our fears and deciding to go into that versus stepping back and saying, nope, that's not me? Can you share a little bit more about what shifted and made you decide that was what you were supposed to do?
I think it really was in that moment where the blogging just didn't feel right. I need to do something different. The word podcast came to my mind. Let me just step into it. Fear is never going to go away, but it's like stepping into it and doing it anyways. And that's where I think courage really comes from, is really doing it, even though you are still fearful. Because I mean, there's still days like, oh my gosh, I have to do another podcast. Wait, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. All of a sudden, you sent me a message in Podmatch. Oh my God, did I not do it right? Those thoughts are always going to come, but it's whether you and I got on the mic today, whether we did it or not. And the more reps you do, the less those thoughts are going to come into your mind as you keep doing it. But it is taking that first step. Go look at the first episodes. They're like, but they're getting better and better with each one. And that's only going to happen by doing the reps.
Reps matter so much. That's how we grow our confidence. And to me, courage is the word I think of that you had to step in and start displaying and doing, which is basically courage means being afraid than doing what you have to do anyway. Like you knew inside that was the direction you need to go in. So you stepped into it. I want to actually go back to this community thing and tie this together because this has been my case. Many listeners might feel the same way. You get into that circle, you get into that community, and you've got these ideas. The only way to get them out is to write them. And many of us write them and then hide it. Or if we're going to actually share it, we feel stupid. And I don't know like a softer way to say that. It's like if I say that out loud, that's going to be stupid. Someone's going to make fun of it. Courage and fear we have to overcome is also the ability to just say it, to get out there and say it. Transparency, I have found, is key in this. Can you talk a little bit about like why we just have to be willing to do this? Like it's the scariest thing, but can you just talk a little bit about being willing to be transparent even when it's very uncomfortable?
That is the most uncomfortable thing. You think about all those important talks that you should have, they become difficult because what happens is when we play them longer and longer in our head. So say you want to have that conversation tomorrow and then you wait a week to have it. Think about all those thoughts that come in your head at that time. But what it comes down to is the more we just start doing it right away, the less time it has for those to fester. And it's really, it's the scary part of having those conversations. I'll be transparent. I had a conversation with my husband yesterday. I didn't think I was going to. And I was like, the kids are getting ready for the airport. I just asked him, do you have a second? He's like, sure. And literally what I thought would have been an hour-long conversation took 5 minutes. It was because I decided at that moment, I'm not going to force it on him. I asked permission first. Do you have a moment? Sometimes when we're in those moments, like we've thought about it for so long, and then we put our thoughts onto someone else. But it's asking that permission as well. Like, do you have a moment? Or can we schedule this tonight? Or can we do this? And so the same thing comes when we're anything new that we're starting. But when you're in the community of people who are doing the same thing you are, who understand what you're going through, you are having a lot of the same thoughts. And you're able to help relieve those thoughts by listening to each other's accounts of it. That's what I believe the beauty of Circle is, whether you want to talk about motherhood, whether you want to talk about speaking, whatever your group circle is going to be about, you're all experiencing some of the same things. I've been in circles with women who are 20, 30 years older than me, still having some of those same thoughts. And so it's realizing that we are more similar than we are different. And when we isolate ourselves, we think it's only us, that our thoughts are different, that we're wrong, that we're stupid, until we get into that community and realize that no, what we are is love. We love each other and we are here to support each other in changing these thoughts, because we are wired for negativity. We are wired to stop that saber-tooth tiger. Like our bodies, like we're stressed. That's what we're wired to, unless we make the conscious effort to change the wiring. It is easier and funner when you do it in community.
Oh, that's so good. When we isolate ourselves, we really do think it's only us. The number one killer of everything we've talked about is when we're isolated, we convince ourselves no one else struggles with this. That's why I have to keep it to me. It's a terrible thing. But the further you can get from that, the more transparent you can be, the better. I think my own experience, Michelle, this is a few years ago. I went into a mastermind group. Someone invited me and he showed me the list everyone was going to be there. And I was like, hey man, I'm not trying to sell myself short, but I probably don't have any need to be there. Everyone else is so much further along. He's like, no, trust me, you'll do well. I'm like, okay, fine. I get there. 8, 9, 10-figure business owners struggle with the same stuff the rest of us do. Who would have known, right? But I convinced myself that I can't add value here because I'm not really there yet. And that's selling ourselves short. And Michelle, I thank you for helping us overcome that. It leads into this last question I want to ask here. Go
One
ahead.
second
Go ahead.
before you do that is I just want to think the last podcast meeting that we had with all the podcasts, and you're like, I'm sitting there and you're like, I don't know how to do breakout rooms. I'm like, I got you, Alex. But it's also stepping up when you have the gifts or the things, it's taking the opportunity to say, I'm here to support you too. Thank you for creating this environment, but then putting your expertise into the mix too. And not, again, that took courage to step up and say, hey, Alex, I got you. That's what it's about, is really just stepping up to your own genius and living in it.
And Michelle, thank you for saving the day. I was running a meeting. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I was like, I'll make you the admin, take over. And that's great to also have a friend in a room that you can trust as well. Most people, I wouldn't pass over admin rights of my Zoom room, right? With a bunch of
I was
people there,
like,
but you saved the day. So thank you for that, Michelle.
and I think that's what it comes down to, is meeting people and just being valuable to each other and supporting each other. And that's what it really comes down to. I mean, then I was like, Alex, will you do this for me? You're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, I don't know if you will. But I think that's what just comes down to, is providing value for each other. And the more you do it, it shows you your capabilities as well and what you are capable. And I think that's what it really comes to. And as moms, sometimes we don't think we're capable. We're capable of all the kids stuff. We're not capable of our own stuff. I want to make sure that you know you are capable of your own empowerment and your own genius, because that's actually what's going to inspire them. A lot of times when we're not, we're projecting what we wanted onto them. One of the reasons why I even started was I was projecting my own anger, my own need of belonging onto my son. And what friends you have, and the conversation would just end in fighting. Once I released that was my own thing, I started focusing on his cooking and his wanting to podcast and all the things he was good at. And that's what it really comes down to, is finding each other's own genius.
Wow, that's so good. Michelle, I do want to get into this last question here, because I
Yeah.
think everyone would love to hear how you answer this. And it's a question that some of you have heard before if you've been here for a little bit. What's a common misconception about motherhood that you think holds many moms back from truly stepping into their genius? And how can they shift their mindsets?
I think I was just answering it right now without even meaning to, but it really does come back to being in your own genius. And what are you capable of? Many of us think that now that I'm a mom, I need to give that up. All the dreams and stuff are for the kids. When is that ever going to stop? Because now I'm looking at my daughter. If I do that, then when she becomes a mom, it's her job to stop. And that's not the dream I want for her. That's not what I see for her. So for us as moms, the number one thing to change is our mindset, in terms of, I need to be the role model for my kids, showing them me living in my genius so they can figure out what their own is, and us not putting our own dreams or lack of, or like for me, it was a negative one, putting my need of belonging onto my son, which wasn't his need at the moment, and realizing whose needs are what. And again, that comes down to the deep listening of what they're saying and not interrupting. It comes down to the pause, the silence. The real beauty is when your kids pause, hold their hand, ask them what they just said, but never put your 2 cents in until they're done talking. Give them more chances to talk.
Yeah, my mom modeled that really well. I was a strange kid, I'll just say that. And I had a lot of thoughts, and she was very good about being like, keep on talking about that. What are you trying to say? Instead of like, Alex, no, stop. There was none of that. My mother has helped me in many ways. I still use a lot of what I learned today. So I love that. That's great, Michelle. Thank you for sharing all that. So from here, I think we go into key takeaways. Am I saying, is that the right next step here?
There's no way to say how to get a hold of me, but everyone knows how. I would love
Right.
for people to come check out the hub. I need some beta testers in there.
Can you share a little more about that? Like, explain.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but real quick. I mean, because it's a powerful thing. I don't qualify, but I think it's really cool. So can you share a little more about it? Let's do it.
My call to action, come check out the Mama Genius Hub, which is, for those of you with the beta, is mamageniushub.com/hub beta. So HUBBETA. What it is, I'm going to give you a 6-month free subscription to the hub. There's a couple courses in there right now. What the whole goal is, though, is we're going through the genius categories, which I hope you're all familiar with: guiding kids genius, empowering mom's purpose, navigating motherhood, igniting connection, unleashing self-care, and success stories. But that's in the mini courses that we're creating with speakers who are here to help give us 15 minutes or less. I know you're busy, but I know you can give me 15 minutes a day. What it is a 1 to 5 minute video and then implementation of 10 minutes, because without that processing, it's only potential knowledge. So I'm trying to do this in mom terms, in mom talks. We are very busy, but I also know that you deserve 15 minutes a day to do this. That's in the membership part that has a 6-month free membership right now. The free part, which I love too, is the Mama Genius Hub. It's all in the same link. You'll get access to both. But there's a reset section, Alex. I don't even think I told you about this. So this whole set, it was one of the things that I love so much. What happens when your kids or life just pushes you to the edge and you want to close that bathroom door, lock yourself in the closet? The speakers who are also creating these mini courses are telling you their inspiration of their breath work, their meditations. They're doing 1 to 5 minute videos of what do you need to do when you close that bathroom door to get back into your body in mom terms. And so it's good to look through those when you're not in the moment and find a couple that you like so that you have a go-to button to get back into your body and then respond to your kids rather than react to them. And that's what this is all about, the processing and really doing motherhood together, because I want us to celebrate each other and do it together and have some more fun doing it. And so that's what the hub's really all about. And so right now, all you need to do is go to the link, put in your email address, and you'll get access to both groups. I ask is for some feedback and some testimonials, the best place for all moms.
That's really cool. I didn't know about that part of it. That's exciting. Very cool. Okay, 5. Is it my turn? Sorry, this is where
Yes.
I get.
I'm going to remove myself from the stage. It's all you, Alex.
Okay, my 5 key takeaways here that I'm excited to share. And I did this from the perspective of not me being a dude, but like what I think a mother would be interested in. My wife and I were around a lot of young moms, so I'll share this. The first thing, and this is in no particular order, it's just kind of like the order that I had noted as we were going through it. But number 1, the first thing is that your dreams matter, not just your kids' dreams. And even when I say it, I know that it probably sounds selfish, but you still have your own individual purpose, which goes beyond your kids. You're going to take your kids to being adults and high functioning adults, and they're going to go be parents themselves someday, right? And that means you still need to have your own internal dream. The moms that I see doing that really well are the ones that are really doing the best as parents, as a mom, but also just thriving, enjoying life themselves. So I think that's the first one I'll share. The second one is let your kids see you in your zone of genius. Like you've got creativity inside yourself. Greatness and creativity is inside of you. Exploring that and letting your kids see the messy process along the way, the wins, the losses, seeing all of it, it's going to help you. It's going to help you by them actually deciding, hey, I want to do something too. Mom's doing that. I want to do this, right? Creativity is a muscle. And I think enough of us don't realize that. We don't think of creativity as a muscle, but it really is. So the more you exercise it, the more you're teaching someone else to exercise as well. The best example I can give is when I see parents, moms, and dads, they go to the gym a lot, their kids start playing with toys like their weights. It's the same idea. If they can see you being creative, they're going to start modeling that themselves in their own very creative way. So I think it's really important to let your kids see it. Let it be messy. Let them watch it. Something like Mama Genius Hub is a great spot for that because everyone's got kids. If your kids interrupt, everyone relates to that. Number 3, weeding out the sound and the wrong things. I think Michelle modeled this better than anyone I've seen. She had a coach, someone telling her what to do. It was a success path she wanted to follow. She realized this isn't what I actually want to do. She started weeding out the noise and narrowing it into her zone of genius, where she really wanted to go. The ability to do that requires us to do the 4th thing I'm going to share. Next up is to reflect, to look internally, stop, put it on paper, get into some sort of circle where you can say, this is what I was told to do, but I just don't feel it, right? Talk to your spouse about it, talk to your friends about it, figure that stuff out. Mama Genius Hub is a great place for that type of thing. I've gone much further being in a mastermind group, being around a group of like-minded people. The last thing I'm going to mention is to avoid isolation. I shared about that. These things all flow together. You notice that? Avoid isolation. Isolation can happen in community as well if you're not transparent. That's something that Michelle also modeled really well. She even said transparent. She had some tech issues. She's not at her normal space. And a lot of people want to hide that stuff, right? But she just is like, hey, here's where I am. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. And I think that so many of us need to say, okay, I want to be in community. To be in community, I need to allow transparency. I need to let go of anything causing fear and just say, here it is. What do you got for me? How can you help me? And how can I help myself along the way? Michelle did a beautiful job sharing that. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, I was going to say, I don't even know if this was something we mentioned, but I just wanted to mention this as a key takeaway is really just showing up, like you said, but showing up as you are. The number one thing is just show up. And whether your hair is a mess, whether the kids are fighting or whatever it is. And that's why this community is what it is because it's for moms just to show up wherever they're at. Because, and like I like to say, especially for circles, it's to get the medicine that you need from that day, whether it's silence, whether it's unloading all this stuff. But again, the whole process is really about listening from here and not living in the complaints, because that's why I started this, was really to get into ourselves and into, yes, we have struggles and we need to talk them out to work through them. But what I kept seeing in some of the groups that I was part of with moms is just that circle of complaint. And that's not what this is all about. This is about stepping into showing up where we're at, meeting where we're at, and moving forward so we can step into our genius.
I think positivity has to be a really big part of any community, right? Negativity can bring it down, but you're talking about keeping this thing really high level, and that's how you make it thrive. I love it.
And I just want to thank you so much, Alex, for joining me today. We were in that meeting and you're like, what do I do for my 100th episode? He's like, well, have someone interview. I'm like, I was your 300th and you can be my 100th and let's do this because you're a wonderful interviewer. So thank you so much, Alex. Hats off to you and I appreciate you. And come join us on Podmatch because you can be interviewed on the Mama Genius Hub. You can get into Alex's as well. So come join us on Podmatch and we'll see you all later.
Thanks,
Bye,
Michelle.
everyone.
I really appreciate it. Congratulations again. 100 episodes is huge.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Mama Genius Hub podcast. If you found value in our conversation, please share this episode with another mama who might benefit. Sharing helps us build a supportive community and reach more mamas like you. After all, it's more fun when we do motherhood together. Until next time, stay motivated and continue to pursue your dreams as you shine in your genius.